Hi everyone, welcome back to MIAC's Artist and Scholar Dialogue series, where MIAC staff and curators are speaking with different artists and scholars about their work, the impact the pandemic has had on their practice, and just what they've been up to in the past several months. My name is Lilia McEnany, and I am a curatorial assistant at the museum, and today we're going to be speaking with Lorraine Gala Lewis, a completely fabulous ceramicist and potter from Laguna, Taos, and Hopi. But before we start chatting with Lorraine, I'd like to briefly acknowledge the place where this conversation is happening, at least on my end, and even though we are in a virtual space, in Ogopoge, within the Tewa world. As a non-native person living in so-called Santa Fe, I am a guest in the ancestral homelands of the Tewa people, and I wish to acknowledge all of the native folks, past, present, and future, who walk on these lands. So Lorraine, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited for this conversation. So to get started, I was thinking for the viewers who may be new to you and your work, can we start with a brief introduction, who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Sure, Gawatsi. Hello and welcome. My name is Lorraine Gala Lewis. My mother is Leona Rivera Gala from Casablanca, the Pueblo of Laguna, and my father is Michael Gala from Taos Pueblo and Hopi, the village of Palaca. Unfortunately, I lost my father at a young age, but was very fortunate to be raised by my father, Victor Perez from Nambe Pueblo, Nambe Owinke, a place of the rounded earth. Nambe is a beautiful pueblo north of Santa Fe at the foot of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, and that is where my family lives. My dad, Victor, is a traditionalist. I grew up learning about our Pueblo traditions from him, dancing at a young age and participating in the Pueblo throughout my life. It's been very important to stay connected with my ties to all communities. I have a daughter, Leah, who is also an artist and very, very active with her work in the community. And I have two grandsons, Mateo, his Indian name's Moonlight Deer, and Jaguar, Balam, who are 8 and 3, both very spirited and caring young boys.
Great. So can you introduce us a little bit to your work and maybe how you came to become a potter?
Sure. I've been a clay artist throughout my life, having worked in clay for over 30 years. I started when I was about 1. No, I'm just kidding. My work has evolved from traditional to contemporary to figurative to explorative. My recent works are recreations of ancestral pre-Columbian pottery that dates back to about 950 to 1200 AD within that time period. The origin of my work is what I bring through my recreations. I try to capture the aesthetics and the beauty and individuality of each piece and remain as close as I can to the original works of art. My usage of materials and the process are a mixture of contemporary and traditional methods. Majority of my time is spent in research. Through my work, I've been able to visit private collections, museum collections, independent and state-operated research centers, libraries, and working with traditionalists. I'm learning as I go, but the people that I've met along the way have really added value to my research and studying. There's so much to absorb, and I appreciate the relationships that I've developed all these years. I also am encouraging other artists to take advantage of these opportunities. New Mexico has some of the best pottery collections, I think, in our own backyard. And part of my quote from my artist statement reads that our ancient ones gave us a glimpse into the perspective of everyday life. And I titled my work Visions from Our Past and dedicate these pieces to our earliest teachers. I believe they're true masters of Pueblo pottery. So much to learn.
Absolutely. And I think you're really known for your recreations of ancestral pottery, right? And you talked a little bit about that research process. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you gain inspiration from these ancestral artists and kind of why you kind of went that route.
Okay, my artistic journey. Yeah. Growing up in the Pueblo, it was pretty much natural to participate in our cultural arts. Oh, I'm kind of backtracking, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
it was natural to participate in our cultural arts and also having the opportunity to try new things. I've always loved working with clay, but painting and drawing have always been a passion of mine. And this is how I started out. I was always drawing and doing watercolors and paintings for my family and friends at a young age. I was also able to participate in local shows like the Santa Fe Indian Market and the 8 Northern Indian Arts and Crafts Show while still in high school. And having these shows in our own backyard, I think it was part of this natural process of us growing up and becoming artists because it was all around us. And living so close to Santa Fe, I was able to attend the Institute of American Indian Arts in high school in my 11th and 12th grade year. We were actually the last high school graduating class. That was in 1979, in dinosaur years. But thank goodness I graduated when I was younger, so it made me feel better. But I really, really enjoyed going to the Institute. It was such a powerful, it made such a big impact on my life, and it just really was very exploratory in the arts, and I thought that was just wonderful. I grew up dancing most of my life in the Pueblo and at powwows, and well, in high school I took to the IIA Performing Arts program, and IIA is such a great school. It allowed me to take courses in many mediums, everything from creative writing to jewelry. I completed the college program at IIA and went on to the College of Santa Fe, still focusing on three-dimensional arts, all the while still working with clay. I was very fortunate at the school, at the Institute of American Indian Arts, to work with instructors and students. They were a big part of my mentoring. With clay, I could give credit to my instructors, Adeli Loloma, who was Hopi, and a contemporary clay artist named Ralph Partington, who was also my instructor. One of my mentors, great mentor to me, was a student. His name was Nathan Begay, Hopi and Dene, and he's passed on since, but he was just an inspiration to me. He taught me a lot about traditional techniques, building, firing, designing, and painting. We collaborated and experimented and spent a lot of time working together. My love for working with clay, both traditional and contemporary, combined with my passion for painting, is pretty much what brought me here today. I'm happy to say I came full circle with IAIA and am now serving on as a foundation board member. So I'm very happy about that.
I think that's so interesting that you experienced both SWAIA and II when you were in high school. I can't imagine having all of those experiences before you turned like 20 years old, you know, that's very unique.
Yes, I think a lot of us that grew up in the pueblos surrounding Santa Fe, and people that actually did go live in Santa Fe at the time, I think we took advantage of that. It was all around us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So was it at II that you kind of had this idea to start thinking about ancestral ceramics? Can you talk a little bit maybe about the way you reached that point in your work?
Well, the Institute really opened the doors for me as far as tapping into other mediums.
Yeah.
So I was able to experiment with everything from, jewelry to sculpture to performing arts to creative writing, and just finding your niche in each one and just bringing it all together and deciding on what you really, really were passionate about and following through with it. So that really allowed me to, it just opened the door for me to continue on. The studios were available for the students, which was very important because we had studio space, so we were able to continue working with our arts even into the evenings, not only throughout the day, but at night, weekends. Our instructors were very caring as far as us putting out our work. And so it was a great time. It's really important for us to be connected as a community.
So I know you have some of your current pieces with you here today. I was wondering if you could show us a little bit about what you've been working on.
Sure. I was just going to mention quickly about my artistic process.
Yeah.
Each piece is hand built and hand painted. I use varied methods for building, coil. I do slab work, pinch, pottery, and then also I use a press. So depending on the piece, I use contemporary clays to create texture and color. I use the kiln for firing, and I paint after the work has been fired. The combination of the clay and the mixture of paints creates an older look.
Mm.
And then studying and drawing the designs is very thought-provoking. This is something where I really have to take a look at the design, how it was laid out, and it's that's where the research comes in. It's just really incredible how these designs came to be. And sometimes I have to come back to a design several times to understand a pattern. And once this is translated, then I will take my time to paint the pieces. So one of the pieces that I have here is a Mesa Verde mug. This is, and this dates back to, I put the date on the bottom here. This one is 1150 to about 1300 AD.
Wow.
So that's a beautiful piece here.
Yeah. So is that based off of a specific mug that you have seen in a collection?
Yes, it actually is. The School of Advanced Research has a wonderful collection, and I'm doing some work for them. And I took some pictures and I was able to really study the design. And I thought, this is just a beautiful, beautiful piece, ancestral piece. And so I looked at it carefully and it just really jumped out at me. And I thought, wow, these designs were so refined and very sophisticated. They almost look contemporary.
Yeah.
And so I also wanted to show another piece of work. This comes from the Mimbres. And the Mimbres occupied the southern part of the damming area and into Arizona. And that area was saturated with a lot of the black and white pottery. And this is a little animal bowl that I created. This
Oh, I
is
love
a
that. It's gorgeous.
Mimbres. It's a jackrabbit. Great. And this goes back to about 950 to about 1100 AD in that time period.
Is that from a specific piece too at SAR?
No, that is from a catalog. When I'm studying in my research, I have so many books that I go through, and sometimes designs will just jump out at me, but I've got this whole collection of designs that I've saved, and it's great to have those resources. I'm going to reach over here and get another piece here. This is another design. This is an old one too. This is also a Mimbres design. This is a beautiful, this is a plate, but I just love the design, how they mirrored the images of the animals.
That's stunning.
Birds, yes. And then this one here is another pottery culture. This is from Chaco Canyon. And they did a lot of cylindrical vessels. And that's what this piece is here. I really like this one. They had the little handles on there.
That's gorgeous.
And I attended a lecture by Patty Crown at UNM, and it was very interesting to learn the history of the vessels. When they did the excavation at Chaco Canyon, they found a whole room full of the cylindrical vessels, and they were all in one side of the room. And when they did the excavation, they were crushed. At the bottom of each vessel was a residue, and they took that and had it analyzed, and it turned out to be cacao from South America. And so that just shows you how strong our trade route was from all the way down south and came up through Chaco and even beyond that. So that was just really incredible. So they would make these cylindrical vessels for a purpose, utilitarian and ceremoniously. And they would store the liquid inside, and they even found like little lids also. And so that retained the heat and it also kept the the vessel actually retained the heat very well. And they were also thinking they could have been using the frothing method back then of going back and forth. So it's just very cool to find out just the different uses and just uncovering what our ancestors did with their pottery a long time ago. It's very interesting.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people who may not be particularly familiar with the region think of Chaco as this very isolated place, right? When in reality,
Mhm.
a center, and it was connected to so many other places, as
Yeah,
evidenced by the ceramics there. And it's such an important story to tell, that isolation is a myth.
it's very well known now. It's world renowned, and people come from all over to come and visit and study and just experience this place. It's a very special place. I was part of the Maxwell Museum's Chaco Heritage Project a couple years ago, and there were 10 artists, and we all had the opportunity to go out there and study and share ideas and share, have conversations. And we were able to view the collection. The Maxwell houses a National Park Service collection. It's all the Chaco items that came from the area. And we were able to be hands-on with these items. And then we were able to bring that out in our artwork, how this influenced us, what we got out of this. So it's a great project, and I was very thankful for the Maxwell for including us Native artists in that project.
Wow, that must have been an unbelievable experience.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I didn't know that they had lids, that those cacao jars had lids. That's so interesting.
I
Did you
didn't
make a lid for your
I
piece?
didn't know I didn't know that, but I did see in the collection at the museum these little round discs. And so they had little handles on them themselves. So we're thinking they tied to the handles of the jar. So right here they would tie something down to it to keep it secure and to keep the heat in. So that was pretty interesting. So we were laughing because we thought that was the first Starbucks opportunity back then. But we were just really impressed, like with the designs of the vessels and just how beautiful each one of them was made.
Mhm. Absolutely. I mean, now that I think about it, of course they had lids, right? But I mean, I just had never thought about it in that way. That's very cool.
Yes, yes. I have one more vessel to show you. This is a larger vessel. This one here is one of the big vessels also that was used to carry liquid as well. And this is just really an amazing pattern, but this is also a Chaco vessel.
That's stunning. That form looks really difficult to make.
It is, and it can be, depending on what you want to do. A lot of the mugs and the drinking vessels are a little challenging, but those take time. And you have our experts, our builders who could just build them so quickly, and it just really impresses me. Love to watch how other artists do their work and do their building.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, switching gears a little bit, I was really wondering how the pandemic and this whole experience of 2020 has kind of changed your professional work and artistic practice. I know for a lot of people, the switch to a digital SWIA has been a huge change, plus the museum being closed and all of that. So, how have you adapted this year?
It's been a tough road. Boy, I'll tell you, the pandemic has really changed our lives, to say the least. My heart goes out to all the families that have lost loved ones. This was unexpected and changed the world. It also changed our priorities, what was most important to us. Um, I had to rely on my previous work experience and my skills to waste no time to find a job to keep going, because we all needed to do what we had to do and hit the ground running so we can just pretty much survive through this, because we were so dependent upon our art shows and so dependent upon the economy, the tourism, all of that. And when all of that stopped, it just stopped us in our tracks. I was very fortunate to be hired on a year-long project with a nonprofit here in Albuquerque, the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association. They're a great organization, and they're very supportive of Indigenous arts and the artists. And so I think with the pandemic, we all had to be creative in finding ways to keep our work going somehow, some way. And with SWAIA's cancellation of their Indian market, as well as other Indian markets and art shows canceling across the country, this was very difficult for our livelihood. We were all feeling the effects. We were all trying to figure out, what are we going to do now? Things just slowed down. And so I thought it was very important to reach out to other artists and just have this support group going. What are you doing? How can we help each other? We needed that support with one another. We needed to talk. We needed to communicate and just be there for one another. That was a priority. And so sharing a lot of these ideas about what other organizations are doing. There were the relief programs, there were the call for artists, there were opportunities to do webinars, there were opportunities to do demonstrations online. Just tapping into all of these resources really made a difference. And it brought in income, it generated income. So I think as artists, we're creative in general, and we just really needed to push ourselves and just get our work out there, have that presence. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that really, really changed lives.
Yeah, and I think just trying to maintain a sense of community through all of this is really the key to getting through it, and just figuring out ways to make it work together. Nobody's going to survive this alone. We all need to connect together. And I think, for me, I've maybe become closer with some people, by communicating in this new way. It kind of brings relationships into new, unexpected dimensions that I think might be a silver lining, if there is one, for the whole experience.
Yes, I think that's important. Outreach is very important. Seeing what other tribes are going through, talking to people, keeping that dialogue open. How are you guys doing? What are you doing? Just really opening up and finding out what's happening across Indian country, because a lot of our shows are throughout the United States. And seeing the impact of the economy within that region. Just preparing yourself. What do I need to do? Some states are quick at opening up. Some states are very much on lockdown. So, it's important to pay attention to what's happening across the country and communicating it amongst ourselves, and just working with what we know.
Absolutely. So last year, I know that you organized a Christmas ornament presentation and demonstration at the museum. Obviously, you couldn't do that this year, but can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe why education about Pueblo pottery in that way is so important?
Sure. I was really happy to be involved in last year's annual ornament event. It was really wonderful to see the MIAC open its doors to the community. Many visitors came through. I talked about our Pueblo pottery and showed the audience how I created my own ornaments. And then we got right back to work. So that was good. I think the MIAC did such a wonderful job and supplied all the materials. We had ready to paint ornaments. We had paints, paintbrushes, and ribbons. And it was an idea of each person to paint 2 ornaments and leave 1 for the MIAC tree. So that was very festive and engaging, and I think it really brought out the kid in everybody. Everybody was laughing and having a really good time, and I thought that was a positive thing for the MIAC to do. It's just engaging of the people in the community, and it was a lot of fun. And the education around Pueblo pottery is so important. For centuries, our ancestors have passed on their legacy through various forms of art. As you can see, many of the designs are still used in today's contemporary pottery. With ancestral pottery, it's important to protect a culture that existed hundreds of years ago. Through conservation, there is that need to educate and teach others the care and appreciation of our natural and cultural resources. It's important that our people have access to these resources and are able to go out and dig clay, go out in nature and gather the materials we need. So with development, it's vital in our fight to protect the environment, and that comes through conservation. We need to teach others to appreciate this so we can contribute and we can continue to pass these on to our grandchildren. So through our lineage, our Creator has bestowed upon us this gift, and it's our way of showing others how strong these ties are and how our ties remain.
I think that point about environmental conservation is so important and often gets lost in these larger conversations about education and access, but conservation is key in all of that. So that's great. That was a really interesting answer.
It's great. I did want to touch on my inspiration from our ancestors. Throughout my life, I was very fortunate to visit places like Bandelier, Plie Cliffs, Mesa Verde, and Chaco Canyon. I loved walking the ancestral paths. I found it inspiring, just following in their footsteps, seeing the pottery, studying the drawings and feeling their presence. And when I visit, I talk to my ancestors and I introduce myself and I tell them of my intentions. I leave my offering and thank our ancient ones for walking with me and showing me their home. I have a lot of respect. I experience a place of gathering and a home for our people. I understand and feel the environment and its elements, and I always feel a sense of renewal and balance, and I put this into my work creating these ancestral pieces. And visiting these places and studying these early art forms inspire my creativity. There are stories of our emergence into the world and our livelihood, and these stories are evident in early works of traditional arts. Our early paintings, our petroglyphs, our rock carvings. There was a continuous cycle of creating, and the work is a true reflection of ourselves, of themselves, what was felt by that individual at the time in the environment. I believe our earliest potters captured these moments. As their lifestyles changed, so did the techniques and their forms and their designs. The pottery became more innovative, refined, and sophisticated over time. And our ancestors passed on these creations in many forms. And these forms and designs are incorporated into today's traditional and contemporary pottery. So I try to look at it and I see the beauty and individuality of each piece. And I really admire the work of all the potters, what they're doing. I think it's just fascinating. Everybody has a bit of themselves and it comes out and it's just so creative. And I think one of the biggest compliments is when another artist wants to trade with you and wants a piece of your work. It's like, it's great. It's the biggest compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Hearing about that sense of renewal and balance that you get in conversation with your ancestors in these places is so inspiring to hear, and really brings a new dimension to looking at your pieces. So thank you for sharing that. Um, so kind of to wrap up, I have a huge question for you, which is, where do you see the world of Native art moving? Maybe as a result of the pandemic or outside the pandemic, just what do you see as the future for your field and your colleagues and your friends?
Well, I think where Native art is headed as a result of the pandemic, I reflect on this, that our whole world is in a pandemic state, not only as a result of the virus, but socially, economically, and environmentally. Um, as times change, we're seeing an increase in indigenous visibility in various forms of art. It's coming out as a result of these changing times. We are seeing movements taking place. A heightened awareness is happening, an awakening. More than ever, we are seeing art imitate life. And a whole new generation of arts and expressions is coming out. And we're being seen and we're being heard. And I see the impact of Native art only becoming greater. Our creativity is very powerful. And I see this change. And so as things start to open up, I think everybody is going to come out with their own way of expressing themselves, how this pandemic affected us, and the direction we're going to go.
Yeah, and I think that point is really interesting about what was normal before the pandemic. I think a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
are thinking about, I mean, what's going to be normal again, and do we really want to go back to a normal where environmental degradation and all of these societal issues were normalized? And I think maybe we're at
Mm-hmm.
a really unique moment where we can kind of hopefully pivot to a future that is more equitable and has more Indigenous visibility, like you said. And I think that's really going to be in tandem with what I'm sure is going to be a huge influx of incredible artistic innovation. I mean, I can't
Yes.
wait for the first like herd or swaya after all of this is over, and just to see what everybody had been working on, you know?
Yes, exactly. It's going to bring out a lot in people as far as creativity. And, when I do touch base with my fellow artists, which is often, it's like, what are you working on? And everybody's, just working on something very different. And I'm anxious to see what people come out with, after this, when we do start having our shows again. It's going to be great. And I'm positive about our outlook. You have to be. It's just, we went through the worst of the worst, and we can only go up from here.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think that is a great place to end, unless there's anything else that you'd like to talk to my audiences about.
I think one thing, yes, I do. As a result of these ever-changing times, I would just like to send my congratulations to Ms. Deb Holland, to her newly appointed position as the Secretary of the Department of Interior. This is a monumental victory across the Indian country and for women of color. And then I just want to send out a big thank you to the MIAC for having me here today and for continuing your webinar series, and your support to the artists. And I just want to say thank you, Tawae Ta'a Kunta. Thank you, and good thoughts and prayers for everyone in the new year.
And thank you everybody for watching.